we're expecting? Is that
I believe
accurate?
So. Mm-hmm.
Somebody's in the attendee. No, we're just on that side. So Chris is
Chris, I couldn't get him to be a panelist, so I just allowed him to speak.
Okay, gotcha.
He's a speaking attendee. That's right. It looks like the same as a panelist.
So welcome everybody to, this is the first, you want to call yourselves a working group, a subcommittee, rulers of
what should
safe streets in Webster Groves?
Yeah. It says subcommittee meeting on the agenda, so I think that's
okay. So you're a subcommittee then. How about that? A joint subcommittee. We'll get very legislatively official on that. And we're happy to have all of you here. Really grateful that you're willing to work on this with us. As you all readily know, we have a limited amount of time to spend some money on this that we hope will make some progress and at least ingrain walkability, bikeability, pedestrian safety more in the way we do things as a city over the long term. So it's not just about spending the money we have, although that hopefully will kickstart our process. There is no staff here today. And so like the Green Space Sustainability Commission, we're going to have council liaisons with you, and then your commission members, staff will come on board once we're ready for things that require staff. That way we make best use of their time as well. So the charge from the council for this subcommittee, and it really is the agenda item, is, as David's here, a generally defined complete streets. And so both commissions have been talking about pedestrian safety in one form or another for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we would like, I think as a counselor, I think it was pretty clear, mostly when Chris came to talk to us, is that, we don't really know what complete streets is. We don't really know what of those mechanisms are most important for our community. We don't really understand as a council to this point how it influences our prioritization of different things. And so we need that education. So I just want to be kind of clear. Nobody's asking this subcommittee to create the plan itself, but to help us figure out some principles by which we can live as a community going forward. And then we'll identify, this intersection needs this street needs that, and so forth. Part of this is just going to educate. And I promise I'll stop talking in a minute. I'm going to check this though. I've jotted down a few things to make sure. So just a reminder is that, we do have a pot of money. Your job, both from a sustainability traffic advisory as well as this subcommittee, is to give council options that will make a difference in the way we spend that money. So it's an advisory role. So when you give us these options, you need to tell us what you think are the best or not the best. And sometimes we can try and go find more money, and sometimes we're not going to be able to do that. But ultimately, council is going to have to make these decisions, and we're going to have to do it in a public session and so forth, so that we have full community transparency during that process. And I also want to thank you, by the way, for making these public meetings, because that's part of how we want to think about doing business, is that anybody who's interested can sit in these meetings. Given the last subcommittee working group, I don't think there was a single person from the public who ever came.
We had someone last night who said she was going to come today.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
But
I'm happy when people do, but I appreciate that. Some people are a little bit
I don't see her, so
they don't want to do as much in public, but please be candid and go. So a couple of things, you have determined goals on here. I would ask that if you all at some point today, and it doesn't have to be right now, choose a chair. Jamie's sitting closest to the head of the table in case that matters to you all. But it doesn't have to be Jamie. It can be anyone who's on this subcommittee, but it can't be one of us on council. Just so that there's one person that can communicate with the city clerk, Katie Nakazano, about scheduling, about agendas and things like that. So do you want to do that first, and then the chair can take over and I can talk less, or I can chair this first meeting and you can do it at the end? Totally up to you all.
I would ask Jamie if you're interested in being the chair, since you're sitting closest to Laura. I would support that.
I don't need to. I feel like I hog up all the oxygen and all the spaces I go into, so I don't need to if somebody else would be interested in that.
I am not interested. I'll say that right now.
I love that the only person unmuted is to say, no, not me.
I appreciate your boundaries. Karen.
Yeah. I am learning to set them. So yay, small wins.
You can share with the rest of us how you're learning that a little later, maybe.
Yeah, by force, my husband.
There you go. Are you willing to accept this role? I think you just said yes.
Going once? Sure.
Okay, so Clark has nominated.
I will second.
Okay, there we go. She knows exactly where we're going. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We can do it that way.
Bye.
Chris, you can just say aye if that's okay with you, Paul.
Aye.
All right, so unanimously, Jamie has been named chair of the Sustainability Commission and Traffic Advisory Subcommittee. You want this chair now?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna let you go from here.
Okay, well, I'm honored to be nominated as your chair. Really though, thanks all for the time today. I think this conversation, we've been eager to get this going. So thank you, Mayor, for helping to see this through, and Jenny for being here. And Councilmember Bliss and Franklin. I was lucky enough to have some time with Chris before he left for warmer climate. And we had a great chat about, what complete streets could look like. And then also like, how do we take that juggernaut of an idea and start to, implement things in more digestible pieces for council to consider. I did spend some time on the Kirkwood website to kind of go over what they're doing, and it is worth a review if you have the time. It looks like they're doing some interesting things for safety, and I want to keep coming back, and the peeps on the Sustainability Commission have heard me say probably a number of times that I want to keep in mind that people-centered places is kind of like my North Star when we're talking about pedestrian safety and bike safety. I want to make sure that, that they feel as safe on the streets as motorists feel entitled to the streets. So I want to keep that in mind. So with my conversation with Chris, we talked about safe routes to school. And I feel like that would be a really beautiful collaboration with the school district or the school board, just to start to build a bridge with them. I think that would get a lot of community buy-in if we were able to talk about how to make things safer for our kiddos. And I am, after looking at Kirkwood's plan, I did reach out to Chris this morning, and he was generous enough to respond to my email about if you all had ever discussed in traffic advisory any bike or pedestrian incidents with the police department. I do know that a child was hit last school year heading to Hickson and by a vehicle, and I don't know, how common is it? Like, I know Kirkwood has that, Kirkwood Road or Lindbergh, whatever you want to call it, 67 going through their community. And so that is a massive concern of theirs as far as pedestrian safety. And I mean, we also have busy streets. So I'm just curious to know, that might be an interesting piece of data to start from.
So if you don't mind me interjecting,
no, please.
It would be an extension of a conversation that actually I participated in, but Jerry Welch started with county people about the intersection of Big Bend and Elm.
Yes, please.
Because it is horribly dangerous for pedestrians. And we now have, the county is applying for a grant, which, do they have it yet?
Yeah, Captain Perk said last night.
Yeah,
yes.
they do have it. Okay. Right. And the the entire point of that reconfiguration, and that's a strong word for what they're going to do, but is to make it more pedestrian safe.
I understood the grant from last night to be Elm south of Glendale.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know.
They're two separate, and they're two separate grants.
So we were talking about
Yeah.
the sidewalk project south of.
Yeah, unfortunately, the one there, Big Bend and Elm, I don't think is scheduled to be implemented until 2025. And it sounds like the one Glendale South is sooner than that.
Yeah, that makes sense based on this.
But so what I'm saying is, and the school district was part of that discussion with
Right.
us. And so I think they are very much a willing partner in this. And I had lunch with the chair of the board of the school district 2 weeks ago, and we were looking for projects to do together. So I know the board is on board and would want to do something as well.
And Jamie, I think if I could interject too, that
Yes, please.
my observation of the Traffic Advisory Commission is that we've been addressing things sort of as they come up, as opposed to a real policy or guiding principles of what complete streets means to Webster. And I think that's something that I would think we might want to move forward to in this group, is really defining what that means for us. And all the stuff then rolls into that, if that makes any sense. So, you know, if it's to make our streets more pedestrian, you know, bicycle, motorists, you know, some sort of guiding principles of what we're trying to do, we can always apply the projects as they come up to those guiding principles and take on special projects. But I think that would be our first really goal, is really defining what does that mean for Webster.
I like that idea a lot. And I
just have one example which we
Yeah.
talked about last night. So I'm still fuming about the sidewalk being closed on Elm. And this has been 10 days since I noticed it. It almost died in traffic. You know, the sidewalk, there's only one sidewalk down North Elm, and it's closed. Part right over the hill, you know, as you're on your way down, it's closed. And they have not blocked off the extra lane to say, you know, to make it safe for people to pass there. I think if we had a policy, this is what complete streets means, that would filter across to all the different types of you know, public works and so forth, that at least start thinking about those kinds of things. I know this is probably done by someone else, the work that's being done there, but I think when we interact with them, we say, hey, are you going to make this safe for pedestrians and that kind of.
If we have a city policy, we ask them to comply with the city policy.
Correct. I guess that's what a mayoral way of saying very short to the point.
Yeah. So is that it, you know, understanding complete streets, I would need to spend more time with it and like, is that something that we could do as the subcommittee and then like present the idea of the adoption of complete streets to council? Is that how we want to proceed? Because then it is the policy that we turn to when projects, you know, get done. Or be.
I think tentatively, if I understand you, that's exactly what council is looking for.
Okay.
Council's looking for that umbrella of policies that we then can begin to apply as things come up. The other advantage to that is that not everything comes to the Traffic Advisory Commission. There's certain things that come to them, but there are a lot of things that don't.
Correct.
And the policies would hopefully apply beyond just what goes to TAC.
Okay.
And I think not only policies, but guidelines to create the policies or standards.
Yeah.
Because they may not all be adopted into an ordinance, but it'll be fold in somehow. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
To be considered like when per project,
Right.
whatever projects come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, is that an outside, is that a trail net type? You know, are they the kinds of people that can help put together a really complete, you know, can we come up with guiding principles, but they come up with a plan?
I think Carrie.
Oh, I was just going to jump in and say, we'll have to circle back to what Clark just asked, but Another important factor of having a complete streets policy is that it helps us go after grant funds. So something like safe routes to school.
Yes.
You know, if we can point to our complete streets, that actually gets us points in the grant proposals. And there's pots of money out there, which you probably already know this, Jamie, but for safe routes to schools specifically. So, but it's much more helpful if you can say this helps us fulfill this piece of our plan and this piece of our plan, and it fits within our overarching principles. So
I mean, I sent the link to this. I don't know if anyone looked at it, but this was just grant money from the Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is their awards by state.
Oh,
Kirkwood, $480,000 they awarded, right? Kansas City, 880, Columbia, 1.4 million. I mean, so there's pots of money out there, but I think these are all based on fulfilling their action plans, projects within that. So I think that's what you're saying, Carrie, correct?
That, and it's I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the city, you know, has as far as a process for going after grants. They're that, I know we do it, so they're not easy to go after. So it's having somebody have the time to sit down and go after all that money, Clark. And some of it, you know, if 480 might come, you know, 20% of that at a time or something. It's several grant applications. So I do wonder if we could be applying for more, though, if we had an overarching plan.
I think that a plan makes the process of application so much easier because you use the same principles and often the same verbiage just for a different organization. Correct.
Yeah. And as far as who can, I agree that TrailNet has done a lot of them in the past. They're not the only, there's lots of consultants across the area that could do one for us. I think it'd be a good idea for us. I don't know who said it, but to come up with our guiding principles maybe, and to look around at maybe some of the neighboring complete streets and see how much of it we can flesh out on our own. Not that we want to finish it on our own, but that'll give us a much better idea of what it's going to cost to have someone else put this together for us, because it's not cheap. So,
right. And I agree. I think that we definitely could come up with our guiding principles, and then maybe, you know, the how do you get from here to there is always the part I think that is the part that we slow down on, or maybe aren't necessary.
Nobody's going to object probably to the guiding principles. It's the implementation of it that's going to be the hard part. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he had to go.
And I know Kirkwood, Clayton, there's a couple of others nearby that have their policies out on their websites.
Okay.
That might help us.
Okay.
I mean, I'm really curious about who's driving this at Kirkwood. You know, is it driven by a commission like this? Is it the city? Is it a combination?
I just wrote down one of my friends she just finished her term as council over there, and she was very involved in it. So I'll call and ask her that question.
Right.
And just see if she has advice.
Because I really like
about this.
The fact we're not working in a silo.
Yeah.
You know, because it does touch. I mean,
So many
green space.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So to understand more about complete streets, like what do we see as our next steps, our charge? You know, is that us coming together after reading through? Like, it is, I'm sure, very wonky, right? In some spots.
Yeah.
Have you spent time understanding?
I tried.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think guiding principles we could come to, you know, go out and do our research, come together in this session, and really sort of pull those out.
I think a literature review would be really helpful for us.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, yeah, and go ahead.
I was going to say, I think, you know, hopefully the value of this subcommittee is that we all come at it with a little bit different expertise and interest, and, you know, maybe some opportunity to brainstorm about what, you know, ideas and, you know, how they get mashed together in those guiding principles would be helpful whenever that opportunity arises.
Yes.
Yeah, Jeff, does Remember the conversation that we had about the Strava data?
Yeah, I still need to, I still would like to pursue that because I think, you know, whatever insight we can gain from that, I think would be useful.
Would you just do a quick little summary of what that is for the folks who weren't sitting in our meeting?
Sure. And others may be more up to speed on this than I am, but I use Strava as a runner, and I know cyclists use it. And it's basically a social media site, if you're unfamiliar, that it'll integrate it'll take all the data from people's walks and runs and bicycle rides, and you can map it by community. And I know this is used in the planning world and it's not a complete, because it's still a small subset of people that are out being active on the streets, but it's enough that I think you can extrapolate data on what avenues, what routes through the city streets are used most often. And I think the data could at least help inform where the routes in Webster where people are out walking, biking, running the most, and maybe direct your focus to those places. But so this is they make the data, at least last I checked, they make this data available for free to municipalities for planning purposes. And I'd just be curious to see, what's out there and how useful it might be.
Yeah, and what is the piece that we're missing to see that through? Is it an email address like with the @WebsterGrovesMo?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty simple application process, but yeah, it needs to be an official city email so that just not anybody can get access to the data.
Yeah,
Jeff, if you can send me a link, I'll do that. I have an official city email, so and then I'll turn over whatever it is we need the data to somebody else who knows what to do with it.
Sure. And there's a good explainer. I can send it out to the group if that helps. The link.
I've actually used Strava before. I just tried to pull it up, and apparently my membership is expired. So I'm just going to pull it up right now. But it's the heat maps that they use. So they call them heat maps. I actually just use them when I'm working on a trail project in St. Charles. So to look into exactly what Jeff said, what's being used now and to what extent. So the hotter the route, the more it gets used. But you can look at things too, as far as flat routes, grades, things like that. It is really good data. So
I just stuck a link in the chat if anyone wants to look at it, and just it explains it a lot better than I.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, this is just sort of apocryphal, but I use the app as well, and I find it incredibly useful when I'm going places that I'm not familiar with, and it'll generate sort of if you say I want to do a 3-mile run in Philadelphia and I'm starting at this point, it'll give you a route that is most often used based on kind of usage by runners in that community. So there's, it's something that I think has many applications, and I think is a great, definitely support trying to get access to that data for this purpose.
Yeah, I also just posted a link. It's used for all sorts of reasons. I noted that, some communities use it to learn where to put bike racks, to see where, they can see where people are biking, where it makes most sense to put bike racks. So I think there's a lot of applications.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I do have a question about that just quickly. Is it based on a radius, or do you just put in a zip code, or do you just, how does that?
Yeah, I think it's by zip. I think it's by zip, and it's all GPS enabled.
Okay.
Am I allowed to share screens? Because I can show you all one real quick.
We'll give you that permission.
So Clark knows how I work. I'm constantly looking things up.
Good I am.
Constantly while we're talking. So here's the St. Louis area.
Okay, so it's not by zip code.
Yeah, no, it can be, but obviously I'm sitting right here. So you can see this is Rock Hill, just to orient people. Rock Hill Road, which I would think would get a little more usage because here's Southwest Park. But it is, so the heat map, like I said, so white is white hot. That's the most used. And then it goes through yellow and orange and down to red is the least used. So, this is Kirkham.
Lockwood? Oh.
Yeah. This would be, is that, or am I wrong?
That's Lockwood.
Yeah, that is Lockwood. That's what I thought it was at first. And then I'm like, wait, so here's Kirkham. Or, no.
No,
Here.
that's Kirkham
I'm
right
all
there.
over. Yeah. So anyway, so this is a good example of kind of what you can see. And this is showing all activity. So we can look at just biking.
Oh, cool.
And we can look at just walking. And sometimes, like in our case, they really overlap. But in some, you can see that the biking is a little less white hot than the walking. But anyway, I like visuals. I'm a visual thinker. So
yeah, helpful. Very, very cool.
And so how is that generated? By
they use
people.
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Yeah, they aggregate. So it's all, it's all privacy protected. So I mean, your individual data is only available to you, but they'll aggregate because it's GPS driven. They'll aggregate data from everybody that uses it, whether they live here or not, and just see where people are biking, walking, and running in a particular municipality or zip code. And then
is it something you actually, like, if you go for a run, you activate it, or does it just track you?
Right. So again, it's a relatively small subset of data for people that use the app, but I think they have enough experience, nationwide, extrapolating that data to know how it, this is a sort of companion website to the consumer app, and this is particularly designed for transportation planners and cities for planning purposes, and it's called Strava Metro, and that's why you have to be a city, or I think even maybe a nonprofit or something like that to get access to this data.
That wasn't Metro I had pulled up. That was just personal.
I was gonna say, I think Strava integrates with other exercise apps like Fitbit and
Apple Watch and Garmin.
So that is a little bit wider of a net than just straight Strava users.
Well, I like that, having access to that that type of data for making our guidelines and informing us on what might be best for the community. As far as like complete streets and having a firm help us apply that philosophy, what, like with TrailNet having done our 2014 walk bike plan, is that a natural, like, should we turn back to them with something like this? And I am so unfamiliar with like the cost of that sort of task. Is that, and Carrie, you said there's other firms out there that
just about any transportation consulting firm. Most of them, anybody that does transportation has, you would say planners, but also engineers. Anybody who's worked on projects has, the knowledge base to do these. As far as TrailNet returning to them, I think for one thing, once we get ready for that path, we should do an open request for proposals. That way we just, the danger in going back to the same well is that they feel you're a captured audience or market and may not be as competitively priced. Usually TrailNet is more affordable because they're more of an advocacy organization. And I realize I'm coming at this as a consultant, so I am almost definitely biased. But the consultants probably have a little more wide-ranging experience that they could potentially draw from, to as far as different things that they've implemented in other areas around the country that they can draw from that well. So I do think, but this is the point I keep making, and I think that's a big step. And I feel like if we know that that's down the path, but I feel like we have to get comfortable personally, I feel like I feel like we should be a little more comfortable that that's the big next step we want to take and we're ready to take. Because it will be, you know, it's oh gosh, I haven't actually done just a pure walk bike study, but you're probably talking $15,000 or more.
Okay.
So it's a big chunk.
It is a big chunk, but I thought it was gonna be bigger, so that's a nice piece of information for the day, Carrie. Thank you.
I would think, I mean, and I again,
Yeah.
And it probably depends on what we
Right.
ask them to do. right?
yes,
Yeah.
and the
Because I
fact that
think they could possibly update, they did the 2014 plan, you know, they could update that. I'm sure it would be a lot less than
Mhm.
doing a bigger, you know, complete
Mhm.
streets policy
Mhm.
implementation plan.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Has anyone else seen that plan, the walk bike plan? I know Paul and Jeff, I think you've
Yeah.
seen it over the years too. Yeah.
Yeah. Seen it.
It's on the website.
I haven't seen it. I need to spend some time with it again to look at it to see.
But it's interesting, just when I talked to them, they said, you know, like the new bike lanes that we have on Lockwood, which was their recommendation in 2014. Today, they said we probably wouldn't recommend that without a separation, you know, a buffer between bike and,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just guidelines. So I mean, there's things that could be updated perhaps, but just to let you know, I love the way our Traffic Advisory Commission is really talking more about these kinds of issues. And people are bringing these kinds of issues to us every month now.
That's awesome.
That are more about making the streets more accessible for everybody and safe. I mean, that's sort of the overarching guidelines.
Absolutely.
And we've noticed, and Carrie is taking this on to work on South Elm in terms of how can just some striping change the behavior perhaps on that. So that's something that she's working on. I see her smiling there.
That's awesome.
But
I was
mean,
wondering where you're going with we've noticed. I was
Right.
like, oh, here we go.
But if you look at what I've noticed is, and I walk almost every day on Lockwood where the bike lanes are, it really is work. Just the striping
Yeah.
has changed the behavior of those cars.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 4 lanes of people going faster than the
Racing.
next. Now everyone is in the right lane.
Right.
And if someone's driving slower, it's slower.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
works.
It does. Believe in a little bit of striping every once in a while. There's a great conversation. If anybody, Jeff told me about a podcast called Volts a while ago, and I'm avid listener. And I can share the conversation with you all about what a city manager or public works person, and I can't even remember what town in California, but just how powerful just some striping and some cones can change things. Okay. Back to the task at hand here. I would like to then first just I want to make sure that everyone has before I say, okay, what are our next steps then as a plan? Is there anything else that anyone wants to share today while we're here?
I just have a question, and maybe I should know this, but Mayor Arnold asked or mentioned at the start that we do have some money, but there's a limited time window for spending that, at least kind of as sort of a kickoff, if you will, for this, for sort of maybe a more longer term plan. What are the specifics there? What are we looking at in terms of time and dollars, or the dollars that are kind of on that timeline?
So council has set aside $100,000 for bikeability, walkability. To my knowledge, none of it has been encumbered at this point. We do not have to have the money out the door. We have to have it encumbered by 2025. So we have to at least be in contracts, even if we haven't finished the work yet. So essentially there's about 2 years to really get this done, preferably to have, because this overarching principle stuff is going to take a while. And then there's going to be that implementation step, which we have to get vendors and we have to do other things. So we need to at least, this is a very long answer to say 2025, we at least need to know who we're going to give that money to.
Okay.
And that can be for planning as well as concrete
Yep,
implementation.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
I like Carrie uses the word paths a lot. I like that, how that fits into her vocabulary. I use concrete.
Yeah. And that was part of the ARPA funds, correct? Okay. And also I think council made this choice based on the balancing act. Am I
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then I went and looked at our survey that sustainability did in 21, and the comments, some of them are so funny, but the most of the comments and most of the people who participated in that survey, one of the leading concerns was pedestrian, walkability, bikeability, safety. So I feel very confident in moving forward in the community support there. Okay, as far as what our next steps should be and the frequency with which we meet, knowing that we have this is finite. What are people's thoughts on how to proceed with this subcommittee?
I would think that maybe we all, as what was the term you used, Carrie, for a literature
review
review, to really see, not that we want to copy what Clayton does or Kirkwood, but see what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we could all come up with what we think our bullet points of our guiding principles are, sort of collect all of those into a big funnel
Mm-hmm.
that could really maybe in our next session and flush that out maybe into it sort of what we envision Webster Groves Complete Streets to look like.
I agree. That's what I was going to suggest. I was trying to figure out how we gather that material and disseminate it within the group, I guess, as a question, because I know we have to keep that also somewhat transparent and public.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we say that we'll spend some time getting to know Complete Streets, pull from that what we think our guidelines could look like, then we'll meet again, just have a discussion about what those guidelines are for each of us, and
maybe group them sort of sort of
put them in categories of some sort. And Jeff, did you want to say something? Sorry, friend.
Oh no, I totally agree with that. I mean, just kind of doing some research and then kind of what we did in sustainability with the sustainability plan is just kind of start with a big brainstorming exercise and then try to winnow that down to what really matters.
Yeah.
So as you do that, I have a request. So people are in the habit of copying the city clerk, Katie Nakazano, on all these things. Please, you don't have to copy her. Copy my official address, and then it still goes on the city servers that way. Or you can just do mayor@webstergrovesmo.com rather than Arnold L. Either one. But that way it's on the city server, but Katie doesn't have to wade through them.
Yes. I have
seems like a lesson. This seems like a lesson learned.
Yeah.
So should we do each of us do our own investigation and just try to share things, or how do we best, I guess, gather the documentation that we all want to review? For the record too, I just dropped a link in the chat that's Smart Growth America, but it's got a very nice overarching, like, how does a city adopt a complete streets policy, and what is it for, and what is the general process? So it's a great place to start. Even for me, I'm going to go back and read this, but
because I don't have Wi-Fi here and I can't open any links that y'all have dropped in the chat, can you throw those in email for me, please, everyone? Sure. Or for us, just so I can click on it later, add it to the 3 dozen tabs I have open right now. I do wonder if we could each do our own independent research. Clark, you're good at this, like sharing links for the group to consider if you think that might be interesting or beneficial to the wider discussion. And then, yeah, coming back to the table, what do we like with 5 items, or should we limit it, or should, like, how do people want to work on that? Because I know sometimes it could get lengthy, or do we need to have a limit? Opinions?
I feel like we should have a limit.
Yeah.
That's why I was wondering if we can look them up and share them, and at some point say, these are the ones that we all want to review.
Yeah.
So I'm going to caution against the conversation about the decision-making part of that.
Yes.
That should be done in a meeting, but you can certainly share all the resources that you have. But the narrowing down the field probably should be done in a meeting.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what if we say, share ideas via email, and then when we come together, then if I wonder, should we pull together like a document? Could that be done? Like we pull together a document with everybody's ideas on one page so we can open them up in a meeting?
One person should do that in that meeting. That document should be at the meeting.
Okay.
It can't necessarily be a Google shared document. We have been very strongly cautioned that
Okay.
violates sunshine. So if everybody sent things to Clark, these are the 5 things that I'm considering. Clark does no editing of those lists. He just compiles them and brings them forward publicly. That's fine.
Clark, would you be willing to do that?
See, look, you guys are so lucky. If you're sitting in the room, I'm helping give people jobs.
Yeah, so people will email me
Yes.
the guiding principles that they want to see in here, and I'll compile them all and bring them to the next meeting.
I think
Is that what
I think that's the charge. Yeah.
and Jeff and Paul, I don't know if you have my email address, but it should be on
Oh, yeah.
the invite.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, Paul. I have one other question.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you want to include the school district? And I'm happy to facilitate those introductions and discussions, but you tell me when you're going to be ready for that.
Okay.
And maybe you don't know until after the next meeting, and that's okay too.
It's probably, I would say, if I had a crystal ball, like coming together, that I know is going to be a really important piece for me. So I would say it's probably not the next meeting, but I would imagine once we have a bit of an idea of our direction.
Okay, so I think if you all don't mind, I will call both Joe Dahl and John Simpson and just give them a heads up.
Yeah.
That this is in process, and that at some point this group is going to be asking for their participation as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I feel that, yeah.
Jamie, you might remember you and I met with John like
Yes.
probably a year ago anyway.
Yeah.
And definitely some of these issues about street safety were discussed at that meeting, but at that time we really didn't have sort of particular things to suggest.
Right.
So this is not going to come out of nowhere, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, Paul, thanks for that reminder too. Yeah. I feel like for you and I there, like that was hopefully the beginning of a good relationship. Okay. All right. Are we feeling confident in what each of us are to take away?
We're moving forward.
That's right. And then we need to decide the frequency in which we're going to meet and what what we all have bandwidth for. And I understand that, like, does Councilmember Franklin or Bliss or Mayor Arnold, do you all want to participate? Do you want to know when the next meeting will be? Is it necessary? I'm just curious, like, I just don't know.
I think one of us probably needs to be at the meetings, just so we on council know what's going on.
Okay.
I don't think we all have to be at all of them.
Okay.
David, are you in a place, you're probably working and participating, are you in a place where you want to comment on that at all? yeah, he may be multitasking. Pam,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on that?
On my involvement or just in general?
Your involvement and in general?
No, I do think it's important because especially with these ARPA funds that we need to make sure are used, that someone's here to help communicate that. So if David is not able to regularly attend, I can attend.
I do have a request, because Elizabeth Shappy is also interested in being a part of the subcommittee, but she works during the day.
And Ann also.
Yes, and so if our next meeting could be either like at the end of the day or I don't know, do you guys, do evening meetings happen other than council?
Yes.
Okay. So finding a time at the end of the day, so she can participate a couple of times and Ann as well. So that might give you all more flexibility to decide which one else did you bring straw.
And I guess the question for me in thinking about that is, do you envision these being mostly participants by Zoom, or do you want in person mostly? Because that impacts where we set this up.
Oh yeah. If I had like, I understand Zoom is like so helpful. Obviously, everybody can like plug in and plug out. For the conversation that we're going to have next meeting, I think it might be easier to be like in this space where we can be together. And then if anybody needs to plug in on Zoom, but again, everybody's availability and their bandwidth, I want to be really respectful of that as well.
Okay.
So that's
we have this room, and then we have one other room that can facilitate a group of this size.
Okay.
And then so we can talk about scheduling one of those two rooms. We could even actually use the council chambers and just put some chairs and tables there too if we needed to.
Okay. Opinions on how much time everybody will need to kind of sort through this. I know traffic, you all met last night. We meet because of the holiday, we meet the following Monday. So I mean, I could meet what is everybody's bandwidth? 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
I think sometime in March is probably good, although I know that probably myself and probably many others might have spring break travel planned.
Yeah. When is spring break? Is it the 16th?
Starts the 16th or 17th, and then for that, the week after that as well.
Okay. Okay, so we'll steer clear of that week.
Those were the days.
No, you guys. Spring break. All right, so let's set a meeting. Is everybody comfortable to try to set a meeting right now? And then if we have to come back to that. Sorry,
That's okay.
Mayor. The week before spring break, like the March 9th, it's a Thursday. What do Thursday afternoons look like for everyone?
It works for me.
March 9th.
We're talking after 5:30-ish or so.
I think, yeah. Would that be acceptable? And does anybody have a preference? Like, would you rather not do it at the dinner hour, but do like 7? Is that even?
Either way is good for me.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I have to figure out how, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, March 9th is good for me, and I can keep the evening open from sort of 5 p.m. on.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's good for me too.
Okay.
So I'm checking.
I don't
what's
know
going on
about,
with the city here.
and our traffic advisory meetings are at 5:30. She makes, I don't know with little kids and later it's harder.
Okay. Or she misses bedtime better. Do you remember that?
I do remember those days too.
Right. Oh yeah.
Not doing bedtime.
Okay, we're looking at the 29th. Is that right?
The 9th,
The 9th.
March 9th, Thursday, March 9th, after 5 o'clock.
Oh, the Board of Adjustments meets at 7, so, yeah, that's fine. They'll be in chambers. So I think right now we're fine with that.
Okay.
And the
in this
building will
case.
be open.
Do we want to
Yeah.
say 7 on March 9th? Is
Yeah.
it okay, everyone? Okay. If I have to come back with
Yep.
a reschedule, I'll let you all know. Let's say that for right now.
Beautiful.
Okay, and then
And then beforehand, email them to me,
Yeah.
right?
send your guidelines.
And will you be asking other people on your commission for their ideas, or do we
Just
wanna
the subcommittee members, so Paul,
So I'll-
Jeff, and Elizabeth.
will you send out a email to everybody
Yeah.
saying, hey, get these to Clark
Yep. Yeah,
by the 5th or something?
okay, yeah. Sure thing.
That way Ann can get it too,
Yeah, absolutely.
and Chris.
Yes. Okay. Are we good, everyone?
Can I jump in? You asked
Please.
earlier, if there was anything anybody wanted to say while we were still
Yes.
here in the room. And
Yes.
I just want to make a quick note to the mayor and the council persons who are joining us, keeping in mind that this is the direction that we're all coming together to try to go. Our TAC has been kind of trying to make some proposals in this direction. So you'll be seeing at least one. We already have one memorandum that's supposedly working its way up the chain to you, and another we'll be working on. So just, I guess, I haven't had I don't get a positive vibe that it's well received so far. So I'm just asking you all to keep an eye out for it, and keep in mind that this is our goal, is that we're going in a more pedestrian and bikeable friendly direction, I guess, is all I'm asking.
Carrie, thank you. Yes, and we do have the Elm proposal.
Okay, good.
You have it. I will also be perfectly honest with you. We have a police department and a public works department that disagree.
Yes.
So we're
I know.
gonna have to figure out what that means. So
Right.
Be a little patient with us.
No, that's
and then,
yeah.
Yeah, and then I know that you all are, believe it or not, I sometimes watch your meetings. I know you all are thinking about some general guidelines about where we limit parking, which I think that's great. I will tell you this though, from our previous council discussion, I don't think there's a huge appetite to go back and reconfigure everything around the high school based on that after. So the council's gonna have to have that conversation too. So, but I will say this. What I would like to see happen is, even if council doesn't agree with the specific thing that comes back, let's find something else that works well. So please, no one ever interpret the fact that maybe we won't do it exactly the way you want it to be done the first time out, that this lacks our perspective. I mean, everybody on council agreed unanimously to set aside some money. We've agreed unanimously that this is a priority for our city. It's just a matter, as we've said before, how do we do the implementation in ways that we can, accomplish real things, and maybe not have our entire police department and public works department pissed off at us in the process.
And I think that's why that guiding principle thing is so important, because, and to get their buy-in too.
Yeah.
And I think with Captain Perks, it's really been interesting to work with him for a year, because I think a lot of times people that have done things a certain way, they like it that way, and that's the way it is, as opposed to, hey, there might be a different way of doing it. So I think I've seen him, have some pushback, but also some open ears from time to time.
And Carrie, thank you, by the way, for saying that. I do appreciate your directness about it.
Yeah, I do. I know this is going to be it's going to be a different way, a different approach, and especially having specific and concrete and somewhat technical suggestions coming from a citizen committee.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're doing this in good faith, and then hopefully everybody gives us a good faith of evaluation in return.
Yeah, that is absolutely deserved. So yeah, I agree.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Carrie. All right, well, is this an official meeting? Do I have to get a motion to adjourn? I don't even know.
I'll have a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
See you in a
Yeah,
second.
Second.
Thanks, Jeff T. All right, everybody, thank you so
Wait,
much.
just like last one. we got the vote.
In favor.
All right.
You just
Aye.
assume it's unanimous at that point. Right?
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Bye,
Thanks for your
everybody.
time. All right, bye.